The Benzite ultimatum arrived, and Earth had one solar day to submit before annihilation. Captain Michael Mason burst into the United Earth Defense Force Emergency Summit. The Benzites ambushed my ship without warning. We barely escaped with our lives. His words silenced the room. This unprovoked attack means one thing. War is coming, whether we want it or not. Mason's report confirmed humanity's worst fears. The Benzites, an advanced alien species known only from long-range scans, were part of a powerful coalition that viewed Earth's rapid expansion as a threat. The aliens demanded that humans accept strict limits on colonization, share their technology, and submit to a subordinate role or face destruction. Frantic debates erupted among Earth's leaders. Some wanted to surrender to avoid bloodshed. Others demanded a show of force. As the deadline loomed, a group of hawkish UEDF generals revealed a shocking secret: a hidden fleet of 500,000 highly advanced dreadnoughts, constructed in secret shipyards throughout the solar system. Reverse-engineered from alien artifacts and powered by experimental FTL drives, this mighty armada had been humanity's ace in the hole for decades. Massive hangar doors ground open in concealed lunar bases, unveiling rows of sleek and deadly human warships. Across the solar system, people watched in awe as the Dreadnought fleet powered up, Earth's mightiest weapons blazing to life. Humanity's future, and the fate of the galaxy itself, would soon be decided in the pitiless void of space. The Benzites wanted to put mankind in its place, but they had no idea what they had started. As the Dreadnought fleet moved into position, the mood on the bridge of the UEDF Orion was tense but determined. Captain Mason stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the display. "Steady as she goes," he said, his voice calm and even. "We're not here to start a fight, but we won't back down if the Benzites make a move." Light years away, in the heart of the Benzite Empire, chaos reigned. High Commander Zorgax stormed through the halls of the Capitol building, his face contorted with rage. He burst into the council chamber, where a heated debate was already underway. "This is an outrage," Zorgax bellowed, smacking his head on the table. "The humans have been lying to us from the start. They've been building a secret fleet right under our noses, and now they think they can dictate terms to us?" Amidst the chaos, Councillor Valara slipped out of the room and made her way to a secure communication terminal. With a few quick keystrokes, she opened a channel to Earth. President Montero's face appeared on the screen, his expression guarded. "Councillor Valara," he said, inclining his head slightly, "I must admit, I'm surprised to hear from you." "Mr. President," Valara replied, her voice urgent, "I believe there may be a way to determination this crisis peacefully, but we must act quickly before the hardliners on both sides push us past the point of no return." As Valara and Montero spoke in hushed tones, outlining a plan for a secret summit, Zorgax was already putting his own schemes into motion. In a darkened room deep within the Benzite military complex, a team of commandos prepared for their mission. Their orders were clear: infiltrate the summit, eliminate the human negotiators, and ensure that the fragile peace talks collapsed before they could even begin. On the neutral planet chosen for the summit, a sense of unease hung in the air. The human and Benzite delegations arrived under heavy guard, each side eyeing the other with a mix of suspicion and hope. As they filed into the meeting room, Captain Mason couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He leaned in close to President Montero, keeping his voice low. "Sir, I don't like this. It feels too easy. We should have brought more security." The air in the negotiation chamber crackled with tension as the human and Benzite delegations took their seats. Captain Mason's eyes darted around the room, his hand hovering near his concealed sidearm. Something felt off, but he couldn't quite place it. Before anyone could react, blast doors slammed shut with a deafening clang. The room plunged into darkness for a split second before emergency lights flickered to life, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. "What the hell is going on?" President Montero demanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. Outside the sealed chamber, the staccato of weapons fire erupted. Muffled explosions and shouts echoed through the reinforced walls. Mason pressed his ear against the door, straining to make sense of the commotion. "Well, it seems not everyone got that memo," Montero replied grimly. For what felt like hours, the delegates huddled in tense silence, listening to the battle raging beyond their protective cocoon. Finally, the sounds of conflict died down, replaced by the hiss of cutting torches working on the sealed doors. Mason readied his weapon, prepared to defend the president at all costs. But when the doors finally creaked open, it was a joint team of human and Benzite security forces that greeted them. Within minutes, the confession was broadcast across human and Benzite networks. The response was immediate and explosive. Benzite civilians took to the streets in protest, while politicians scrambled to distance themselves from Zorgax's actions. "Sir," a sensor officer called out, "we're detecting multiple Benzite warships powering up weapons. They're on an intercept course." Captain Mason's eyes hardened as he barked out orders. "Battle stations! Prepare to engage, but hold your fire until my command." The incoming fleet split in two, with the larger group positioning themselves between the human dreadnoughts and the smaller Benzite force. A communication channel crackled to life, and a stern female voice filled the bridge. "This is Fleet Admiral Zalax of the Benzite Navy. We refuse to carry out High Commander Zorgax's illegal orders. We seek a peaceful resolution to this conflict." Mason exchanged a look of cautious optimism with his XO. "Well," he said, allowing himself a small smile, "things just got a hell of a lot more interesting." The tense standoff between the human and Benzite fleets dissolved as quickly as it had formed. Admiral Zalax's bold move to protect the human ships from her own rogue elements changed everything. Within hours, encrypted channels buzzed with urgent communications between Earth and Benzar. "Yes, sir," replied his chief of staff. The Benzite ruling council moved swiftly once the evidence of his treachery became public. They're eager to salvage this situation. Montero nodded, a cautious hope rising in his chest. "Then we have an opening. Set up a secure line with Admiral Zalax. It's time we talked face to face." Montero agreed. "Transparency is key. We'll share our capabilities if you do the same." The negotiations were grueling. Teams of advisors and military experts from both sides poured over technical specifications and strategic assessments. Humans marveled at the efficiency of Benzite shield harmonics, while the aliens were stunned by the raw firepower of Earth's plasma beam weapons. "We cannot cede those systems," one hissed. "Our people have prior claims." "And risk war over a handful of rocks," the other countered. "The humans have already begun terraforming. It would be madness to demand they abandon that investment." "Joint administration," she said, her holographic form flickering slightly. "We manage the disputed sectors together, share the resources equally." With the framework of an agreement taking shape, Montero decided it was time for a grand gesture. He invited Zalax to Earth for the formal signing of the Accords. As a show of trust, he offered her a tour of one of the secret Dreadnought construction sites. Zalax's shuttle glided into the cavernous hangar bay, carved into the lunar regolith. Her eyes widened as she took in the sheer scale of the facility. Skeletal frames of massive warships stretched as far as she could see, swarms of construction drones weaving between them. "Incredible," she murmured. "To keep this hidden for so long." Mason, serving as her escort, nodded grimly. "We did what we had to do to survive. Now we're hoping it can help preserve the peace instead." Their tour was cut short by the wail of alarms. Mason's communicator crackled to life with an urgent message from the Orion. "Multiple bogies on an attack vector, Benzite signatures, but not responding to hails." Zalax's face hardened. "Zealots? They would rather see everything burn than accept change." Mason ushered her back to the shuttle, barking orders to his crew. "Get us out of here, now!" Zalax sagged in her seat, the near brush with death leaving her shaken. "If your ships hadn't been there..." Mason's expression resolute. "Let's make sure this peace holds, Admiral, for all our sakes." The Kraxan spy ship silently disengaged its cloaking field, pulsing away into the depths of space. Its databanks bulged with invaluable intelligence on Earth's military capabilities. Aboard the UEDF Orion, Captain Mason's comlink chirped, "Sir, urgent message from Earth Command. President Montero requests your presence planetside immediately." Within hours, Mason found himself striding through the cavernous expanse of Earth's primary lunar shipyard. The air thrummed with the constant din of construction drones and plasma welders. Skeletal frames of new dreadnoughts stretched as far as the eye could see. President Montero stood at a viewing platform, his face etched with concern as he gazed out at the hive of activity. Beside him loomed a tall, austere man with close-cropped silver hair. Mason's eyes widened. Graves was a legend, the architect of Earth's secret military buildup. His very existence had been classified, until now. "A pleasure, sir," Mason said, shaking the Admiral's hand. "Though I admit I'm curious about the reason for this meeting." They paused before a colossal hangar bay. Inside, a dreadnought's gleaming hull stretched into the distance. Its flanks bristled with weapon emplacements that made Mason's throat go dry. Mason's brow furrowed. "Outside assistance?" "Sir, urgent intel from the Kraxan border." Montero's face darkened as he scanned the report. "It's as we feared. The Kraxan are mobilizing, using our dreadnoughts as justification. Their war machine is ramping up fast." The far wall of the hangar began to retract, revealing a yawning chasm beyond. Mason's breath caught in his throat as a truly titanic vessel came into view. It dwarfed even the massive dreadnoughts, a behemoth of metal and energy weapons that stretched for kilometers. Montero nodded, his expression grim. "And our best hope for keeping the Kraxan in check. Captain Mason, I'm promoting you to Rear Admiral. You'll be Graves' second-in-command aboard Mjolnir." Mason's head spun, but he snapped to attention. "Yes, sir. What are our orders?" "We take up position near the Kraxan border," Graves said. "Show them what they're up against, and pray to whatever gods might be listening that it's enough to make them think twice." As they boarded a shuttle bound for Mjolnir, Mason couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The galaxy teetered on a knife's edge, with humanity wielding power it had never known before. One wrong move, and everything could come crashing down. As Mjolnir's engines thrummed to life, Mason felt the weight of his new responsibilities settle onto his shoulders. The Super Dreadnought's bridge buzzed with activity, crew members finalizing pre-launch checks and coordinating with Earth Command. Admiral Graves stood at the helm, his posture rigid as he surveyed the massive view screen. "Set course for the Kraxan border," he ordered. "Maximum stealth protocols engaged." "Sir," he said, turning to Graves, "what exactly are we walking into?" A priority communique flashed on Mason's console. "Admiral, it's President Montero. He's requesting a secure channel." Montero's holographic form materialized on the bridge, his face etched with concern. "Gentlemen, we've set a plan in motion. A Kraxan intelligence officer named Gallia has agreed to feed false information to Overlord Kargon." Montero nodded. "She opposes Kargon's expansionist agenda. Right now, she's our best shot at averting full-scale war." As Montero outlined the strategy, Mason felt a mixture of admiration and unease. It was audacious, using Gallia to bait Kargon into a trap. But the stakes couldn't be higher. Days passed in tense anticipation as Mjolnir held position near the border. Finally, long-range sensors lit up with activity. Graves' eyes narrowed. "Looks like our ruse worked. All hands, prepare for combat. Activate the Omni Annihilator targeting systems." The Super Dreadnought's weapon banks hummed to life as the Kraxan fleet barreled towards them. Mason watched the tactical display, his heart racing as the enemy ships closed in. "Now!" Graves bellowed. A blinding beam of energy erupted from Mjolnir's spinal mount, slicing through space. The lead Kraxan ships didn't stand a chance. Their shields flickered and failed in an instant before their hulls were vaporized. "By the stars," Mason breathed, stunned by the weapon's destructive power. The Kraxan fleet's formation disintegrated into chaos. Mjolnir's point defense systems lit up, swatting down incoming missiles and fighter craft with ease. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent. Then a group of Kraxan battlecruisers surged forward, energy weapons blazing. Graves shook his head. Their loss, fire at will. Mjolnir's weapons sang again, tearing through the Kraxan ships without effort. Within minutes, the once mighty armada was reduced to scattered pockets of resistance. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Mason turned to Graves. "What now, sir?" The Admiral's expression was grim. "Now, Rear Admiral, we see if this show of force was enough to bring the Craxans to the negotiating table. And we pray we haven't just ignited an even bigger powder keg." Mjolnir's engines pulsed as it set course back to Earth, leaving behind the scarred battlefield and an uncertain future for galactic relations. As Mjolnir cruised back to Earth, the bridge remained tense. Admiral Graves paced, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Mason couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Weeks later, Mason found himself in a high-security briefing room deep beneath the lunar surface. President Montero's hologram flickered to life, joined by Admiral Graves and a familiar face, Fleet Admiral Zalax of the Benzite Coalition. Graves cleared his throat. "Mr. President, I believe it's time we discuss the Sirius sector." Montero's brow furrowed. "Go on." "We need a permanent foothold there," Graves continued. "A military installation to cement our position and project strength." Zalax's hologram bristled. "Absolutely not. The Sirius sector is neutral territory under our accords." "Which is precisely why we need a presence there," Graves countered. "To ensure it stays that way." Months passed in a blur of activity. Mason found himself reassigned to oversee security for the nascent Dreadnought station. The construct grew rapidly, a testament to human engineering prowess. Massive Dreadnoughts, repurposed as mobile factories, churned out components at an astounding rate. "Impressive, isn't it?" a voice said behind him. Mason turned to see Captain Evelyn Santos, newly appointed commander of the station's defense fleet. "Captain," Mason nodded, "it's a marvel, but I can't help feeling we're playing with fire." Their conversation was cut short by a priority alert. Mason's blood ran cold as he read the message. "Craxan ships detected on approach. A lot of them." The first wave of Craxan fighters slammed into the station's partially operational shields. Energy weapons lanced out, cutting swaths through the swarm. But more kept coming. "Where the hell is Graves?" Santos shouted over the din of battle. The tide turned swiftly. Craxan ships, caught between the station's defenses and the reinforcements, broke formation. Some fled, others fought to the bitter end. Hours later, Mason stood in the debris-strewn command center. Graves limped in, his uniform scorched and torn. Mason nodded, his gaze drawn to the view screen. Beyond the wreckage of battle, Dreadnought Station loomed, battered but unbroken. A new era had begun, and humanity's place in it remained uncertain. Mason's eyes scanned the latest intelligence reports, his forehead creasing with each swipe of the datapad. Dreadnought Station's successful defense against the Craxan incursion had sent shockwaves through galactic politics. Now, the fragile peace teetered on a knife's edge. "Rear Admiral, I'm dispatching a new negotiating team to Zephyrin Station. Admiral Lee Cho will lead, with diplomat Amara Vashti as his counterpart. Your presence is requested as an advisor." Mason's stomach tightened. He'd served under Cho before. The man was a hardliner through and through. "Understood, Mr. President. When do we depart?" "Immediately. The Benzites are already en route." Vashti, a tall woman with close-cropped silver hair, shook her head. "Push too hard, and we risk shattering the coalition entirely. We need allies, not conquest." Their shuttle docked at Zefran amid a flurry of media activity. Benzite and human reporters jostled for position, shouting questions. Mason caught a glimpse of Admiral Zalax's cerulean face, her expression carefully neutral as she strode past. The negotiations began in a cavernous chamber, its curved walls adorned with the flags of 100 worlds. Cho wasted no time, laying out a series of demands that made Mason wince. "Earth requires the immediate withdrawal of Benzite colonists from the following systems," Cho began, activating a holographic star chart. Dozens of worlds flashed red. The arguments raged for hours. Mason watched as Vashti attempted to soften Cho's rhetoric, proposing compromises that fell on deaf ears. With each passing day, the talks grew more acrimonious. On the station's promenade, Mason found himself cornered by a group of human protesters. Their signs decried militarism and the Dreadnought dictatorship. "How many more will die for your war machines?" a young woman shouted, her eyes blazing. Before Mason could respond, a rival group pushed through the crowd. Their slogans called for conquest, for unleashing Earth's might against Xeno scum. Security forces moved in, separating the factions. Mason retreated to his quarters, the weight of impending disaster settling on his shoulders. An encrypted message from Earth Command flashed across his terminal. New orders, Dreadnought Station's battle group was to be redeployed to reinforce negotiations. Mason's blood ran cold. This was a powder keg waiting to explode. In the chaos, Mason received an urgent communique. Admiral Zalax requested an immediate meeting with President Montero on Dreadnought Station itself. As they docked, Mason caught sight of President Montero's entourage. Diplomat Amara Vashti walked beside him, her silver hair catching the harsh light of the hangar bay. Opposite them, Admiral Zalax's cerulean skin stood out among her retinue. At her side loomed General Evrak, his posture rigid and eyes wary. Mason read over Montero's shoulder, his stomach dropping. Prototype benzite disruptor cannons in rebel hands? This changes everything. Montero's face hardened. He turned to Cho. "Admiral, initiate a blockade of benzite shipyards. We need to contain this." The negotiations devolved into heated arguments. Mason watched as Vashti attempted to mediate, her calm voice a counterpoint to Cho's thunderous demands. A deafening explosion rocked the station. Alarms blared as smoke billowed from the direction of the docking hub. Screams and the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the air. Chaos erupted. Security teams scrambled to evacuate civilians as reports flooded in. Mason's blood ran cold as he deciphered the intercepted transmissions. "Human purists," he reported. "They've taken hostages and rigged explosives near the reactors." Cho's eyes blazed. "We storm their positions now." "Absolutely not," Montero countered. "We can't risk further escalation." He turned to Captain Evelyn Santos, who had just arrived on the scene. "Captain, assemble a boarding team. Use the Dreadnoughts transporters to extract those hostages." Benzite vessels swarmed the station, projecting energy barriers to seal the breaches. Mason helped Montero to his feet, noting the president's pained grimace. Mason joined Santos's team as they materialized aboard one of the Dreadnoughts. The transporter room was a flurry of activity as they prepared to beam into the terrorist-held sections. "Molecular disassembly is risky," Santos warned, "but it may be our only shot at getting those hostages out alive." They rematerialized in a smoke-filled corridor. Ahead, purist fighters opened fire. Mason dove for cover as plasma bolts seared the air around him. "Initiate emergency extraction. Get those hostages out now." Mason grappled with a knife-wielding fanatic, feeling the blade slice his arm. He slammed his attacker against a bulkhead, darkness creeping at the edges of his vision. They sprinted for the extraction point as explosions rocked the station. Mason felt the familiar tingle of the transporter beam as the world dissolved around him. He rematerialized in the Dreadnought's medical bay, surrounded by the chaos of triage. Doctors worked frantically to stabilize the rescued hostages. Through the viewport, Mason watched Dreadnought Station burn against the backdrop of stars. Santos's voice crackled over the comms. "All hands, brace for emergency slipstream jump." The universe seemed to stretch and blur as they made the desperate leap to safety. When reality snapped back into focus, Mason saw other ships of the fleet materializing around them. "This attack demands retaliation," he insisted. Montero shook his head. "No, we've seen where that path leads." He turned to Zalax, extending his hand. "Admiral, your people saved countless lives today. I propose we move forward together. Joint security operations on the station. It's time we built real trust between our peoples." As the leaders moved to implement the new security protocols, Mason couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Dreadnoughts had changed the balance of power, but the real challenge lay ahead, forging a lasting peace in a galaxy forever altered. Mason watched the news feeds intently as President Montero addressed the United Earth Congress. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as Montero outlined his bold new initiative. We stand at a crossroads, Montero said, his voice firm despite the visible strain of recent events. The attack on Dreadnoughts Station has shown us the dangers of division. Now, we must forge a new path, one of mutual understanding and cooperation. The chamber erupted in heated debate. Mason turned to Amara Vashti, who stood beside him, her silver hair gleaming under the harsh lights of the observation deck. "This won't be an easy sell," Mason said quietly. Days later, Mason found himself on the newly established human colony in the Haven system. The air was thick with the scent of freshly turned earth and unfamiliar flora. He watched as a group of Benzite emissaries disembarked from their sleek transport, their cerulean skins shimmering in the alien sunlight. "Welcome to Haven," a human colonist said, extending his hand. The lead Benzite hesitated for a moment before clasping it in a gesture of goodwill. As the weeks passed, Mason observed the gradual thawing of relations. In the communal gardens, human and Benzite botanists worked side by side, comparing cultivation techniques. Children from both species played together in the colony's central plaza, their laughter a universal language. "They have no right to be here," a human miner shouted, face flushed with anger. "After everything they've done." In a secure communications hub, he listened as Admiral Santos outlined her daring plan to President Montero. Montero's face was grave. "The risks are necessary," Santos finished. "My Omega Squadron can get it done." Days later, Mason stood in Dreadnought Station's command center, watching as Santos's stealth fleet slipped through Craxon defenses. The tension was palpable as they waited for news. Suddenly, the main view screen lit up with a blinding flash. The massive Craxon battle station imploded, torn apart from within by strategically placed transwarp mines. Cheers erupted throughout the command center. Mason allowed himself a small smile, but he knew the real challenges lay ahead. As reports of Craxon infighting filtered in, he caught sight of Admiral Cho's triumphant grin. "Now's our chance," Cho said, his voice eager. "We can force their surrender while they're in chaos." President Montero shook his head. "No, we have an opportunity here for real change. We'll offer terms, but not at the point of a gun." On Benzar, Admiral Zalak stood before the Thovian Council, her fins quivering with impossibly strong emotion. "Honored overseers, I bring evidence of grave ethical violations within Project Fenrir." The chamber fell silent as Zalax presented her findings. Holograms flickered to life, showing human test subjects, some clearly unwilling, subjected to molecular manipulation experiments. As the revelations spread, Mason found himself back on Haven. He walked through the colony's main street, taking in the sight of humans and Benzites working together to construct new buildings. In a small park, he spotted Amara Vashti tending to a garden alongside a group of colonists from both species. The plants were a vibrant mix of earth and Benzar flora, growing together in harmony. "Godspeed, Admiral," he said. "You're making history today." Months later, Mason stood on the bridge of the UES Intrepid, surveying the alien landscape of Kepler 186f. The planet's surface was a swirling mass of reds and oranges, punctuated by vast purple oceans. Benzite and human shuttles ferried supplies and personnel to the surface, their contrails crisscrossing the amber sky. Mason frowned, studying the readouts. Toxic dust storms raged across the planet's equatorial regions, while corrosive rains lashed the temperate zones. He watched as a team of environmental engineers deployed massive atmospheric scrubbers, their exosuits barely visible through the haze. On the surface, Benzite diplomat Valara conferred with her human counterparts. Her fins quivered as she examined soil samples, her voice tinged with concern. "The mineral content is unlike anything we've encountered," she said. "Our terraforming models will need significant adjustment." "We're losing people, Mason," she said, her voice tight. "The environment is more hostile than we anticipated. We need—" The transmission cut out abruptly. Mason's stomach clenched as he imagined the worst. But before he could voice his concerns, an aide burst into the room. Mason's eyes widened as he read the report. Volkov had taken drastic measures, using alien DNA to modify himself and a group of volunteers. The results were startling. On Kepler 186f, Volkov stood before a gathering of colonists, his skin now a mottled green-gray, eyes adapted to filter the harsh sunlight. He spoke, his voice raspier than before. "We can survive here," he declared. "We can thrive, but we must evolve." The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some stepped forward eagerly, while others recoiled in horror. Among the dissenters, Mason recognized the telltale insignias of human purist cells. As news of the genetic modification spread, tensions within the colony escalated. Mason watched helplessly as factions formed, with purists refusing to undergo the unnatural procedures. Admiral Cho's voice boomed through the colony's communication channels. "This abomination cannot stand. We are human beings, not lab rats to be experimented upon." Santos struggled to maintain order. Her voice strained as she addressed the colonists. "We must unite to survive. These adaptations are our best chance at—" Her words were drowned out by the roar of engines as Cho's supporters commandeered a transport, fleeing to an isolated region of the planet. As Zhao's ship slipped into cloak around Kepler 186F, the situation on the ground deteriorated. Mason received frantic reports of mutinies and sabotage attempts. But before Earth could mount a response, the Thovian observers made their move. Massive clouds of shimmering nanites descended upon the planet, enveloping entire regions in a silvery mist. For a moment, hope surged through the colony as barren wastelands began to transform into lush, alien oases. But the triumph was short-lived. The nanites, exposed to Kepler's unique radiation, began to mutate. The landscape writhed and shifted, familiar terrain giving way to impossible geometries and bizarre new life forms. In the colony's primary habitat dome, Santos stared in horror at the readings flooding her screens. "My God," she whispered, "it's not just the planet, our people. They're changing too." "President Montero," she said, her voice crackling with static. "We need immediate evac—" The transmission cut out as alarms blared throughout the habitat. Santos sprinted to the command center, her heart pounding. On the main view screen, a familiar face appeared. Admiral Cho, his eyes blazing with fanatical intensity. "This ends now," Cho snarled. "Kepler 186 will be cleansed and claimed for humanity alone." Santos watched in disbelief as Cho's fleet moved to blockade the system, cutting off all escape routes. She turned to her officers, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. "All hands to battle stations," she ordered, "and may whatever gods are out there have mercy on us all." "Sit rep," Santos barked. Santos nodded, her mind racing. She opened a secure channel to Earth, praying the transmission would cut through Cho's jamming attempts. "Critical, sir. Cho's gone rogue. He's threatening to obliterate the entire colony unless we surrender immediately." Montero's expression hardened. "Neutralize him, Admiral, by any means necessary." As the transmission ended, Santos turned to her XO. "Contact Captain Zhao. Tell him to prep Omega Squadron for a stealth assault on Cho's flagship." Klaxons blared as Santos strode onto the bridge of her dreadnought. The view screen showed a terrifying sight. Cho's ships unleashing experimental weaponry that tore through space itself. 2 human vessels erupted in silent explosions, their hulls warped and twisted by the alien technology. She opened a channel to Zhao's stealth squadron. "You have a go, Captain. Hit that flagship hard and fast." Zhao's voice crackled through the comm. "Aye, Admiral. We'll buy you the time you need." Santos watched as pinpricks of light betrayed the stealth ship's positions, streaking towards Cho's massive vessel. For a moment, hope flared in her chest. Then blazed with energy lashing out at the approaching ships. Zhao's scream cut through the static before his signal went dark. "No!" Santos slammed her fist on the console. Cho's face appeared on the main view screen, triumph etched in every line. "I warned you, Santos," he sneered. "Surrender now, or I'll turn this godforsaken rock into a mutagenic hellscape." Santos's mind raced, weighing impossible options. Then a flash of inspiration struck. She turned to her communications officer. "Get me a secure line to Counselor Velara, now." Minutes later, Velara's cerulean face shimmered before her. Santos spoke quickly, outlining her desperate plan. We need to combine our fleets, hit Cho with everything we've got. We'll listen to reason, Santos pressed. This is our only chance to preserve what we've built here. All ships, execute Pattern Omega. On the smoldering bridge of Cho's shattered flagship, Santos stood face to face with her former mentor. Cho glared defiance, even as blood trickled from a gash on his forehead. You've doomed us all, he spat, polluting humanity with alien filth. A Benzite scientist approached, his modified exosuit whirring softly. Admiral, we're detecting some unusual cellular activity in the colonists exposed to the nanite terraforming. Santos nodded, unsurprised. We'll face it together. Human, Benzite, whatever we become, we're in this as one. She opened a channel to Earth, preparing to brief President Montero on their Pyrrhic victory. As the connection established, Santos squared her shoulders, ready to face whatever came next in this brave new future. Commander Chen, assemble the senior staff in Briefing Room 1, she ordered. We have work to do. Minutes later, Santos stood before a table of expectant faces. She took a deep breath and began. Earth has greenlit full cooperation with the Benzites and Thovians. Our primary objective is to contain and stabilize the mutagenic biosphere that's overtaking the colony. Santos activated a holographic display, revealing a swirling cloud of microscopic machines. The Thovians have proposed deploying what they call omni-converters, programmable nanoclouds designed to restructure the planet into habitable biozones. Over the next weeks, Santos watched with a mixture of awe and trepidation as the omni-converters went to work. Vast swathes of bioformed wasteland shimmered and shifted, transforming into regions that registered as breathable on her sensors. The door hissed open, revealing racks of sleek alien weaponry. Zhao's lips curled into a satisfied smile as he began carefully packing the chakra bioweapons into a secure container. Back in the newly terraformed sectors, the first wave of human and Benzite settlers began establishing community habitats. Santos observed their progress from the bridge of her flagship, a flicker of hope kindling in her chest. That hope was short-lived. Alarms blared as multiple explosions rocked a cluster of Benzite colony ships. Santos's hands clenched into fists as she watched the vessels list and drift, spewing atmosphere into the void. As human and Benzite forces moved to quash the Ivrakis threat, an encrypted transmission came through on Santos's private channel. It was Zhao, his face flushed with an unnatural vitality. Santos frowned, a cold dread settling in her stomach. Zhao, what have you done? But before he could answer, another alert demanded her attention. This time, it was a priority message from Rakor. Santos's eyes widened as she absorbed the news of Overlord Kargon's near assassination and subsequent flight. Santos whirled to face the main view screen, watching in horror as Thovian installations across Kepler erupted in flames. A heartbeat later, the omni-converter swarms blazed with new purpose, their silver clouds coalescing into a tide of destruction that swept towards the human settlements. As chaos engulfed the Kepler system, Santos's mind raced. She had mere moments to formulate a response that might salvage this rapidly unraveling situation. Her fingers flew across the console, opening channels to every allied ship in range. Action! Santos's words cut through the chaos on the bridge, as alarms blared and tactical displays flickered with incoming threats. She gripped the arms of her command chair, her squeezing hard as she watched the omni-converter swarms coalesce into a tide of silver death. Helm, evasive pattern Delta. Weapons, target those Thovian installations and fire at will. The Dreadnoughts shuddered as it unleashed a barrage of energy beams, cutting through the void to strike at the burning Thovian outposts. But it was too late. The reprogrammed nanites surged forward, engulfing the nearest human settlement in seconds. Get us out of here, Santos ordered, her voice cracking. Maximum warp. Any vector clear of those nanites. Mr. President, Santos began, fighting to keep her voice steady. Kepler is lost, though Hera has betrayed us. The omni-converters have been reprogrammed. They're destroying everything, transforming our people into... Montero's hologram flickered as he processed the information. This is worse than we thought. Admiral, I'm promoting Ian Zhao to lead a new strike force. We're calling them the Bloodhawks. They'll be using enhanced abilities to counter these mutagenic threats. Her tactical officer's voice cut through her thoughts. Admiral, we're receiving a distress call from the Benzite cruiser Nexus. They're under heavy fire from biomechanical constructs? No, she whispered, realizing the horrific implications. They can't. But even as the words left her lips, Santos knew there was no other choice. Kepler was lost. All that remained was to ensure the contagion didn't spread further. She opened a channel to all Allied ships in range. This is Admiral Santos. We have new orders. Fall back immediately. I repeat, all vessels withdraw from the Kepler system now. As her fleet disengaged, Santos cast one last look at the writhing, silver-shrouded planet below. She offered a silent prayer for the souls they were leaving behind, then gave the order to jump to warp. The antimatter barrage would sterilize Kepler, but Santos knew the shockwaves from this day would reverberate across the galaxy for years to come. Santos nodded, straightening her uniform. Put it through. Santos's mind raced, calculating potential strategies. What are your orders, sir? I'm authorizing a preemptive strike, Montero said. We need to hit Kargan's stronghold before he can outfit his Dreadnoughts with those drive systems. And for this mission, we're calling in Zhao's Bloodhawks. Santos's eyes widened. The metamorphic commandos. Are you sure that's wise, given recent events? The transmission cut out, leaving Santos alone with her thoughts. She tapped her comm badge. Bridge to Zhao. Report to my ready room immediately. Minutes later, Zhao stood before her, his form subtly shifting as if struggling to maintain a single shape. Santos studied him, noting the barely suppressed energy thrumming beneath his skin. We have a mission, she said, activating a secure holodisplay. Kargan's stronghold. You and your team will infiltrate, then sabotage his dreadnoughts before they're fitted with transwarp drives. Zhao's eyes gleamed with an unnatural light. Consider it done, Admiral. The Bloodhawks' infiltration went smoothly at first. Disguised as cargo, they slipped past cracks on security and into the heart of the fortress. But as they neared the Dreadnought construction bays, alarms blared. Purgers, Zhao hissed, his form elongating into a battle-ready configuration. They can sense us. Genetically engineered Kraxan warriors poured into the corridor, their eyes locked on the shape-shifting intruders. Energy weapons flared to life as the Bloodhawks scattered, taking cover behind bulkheads and equipment. Zhao's arm morphed into a living weapon, spraying corrosive fluid at the nearest purger. The creature's armor sizzled and melted, but it kept advancing, its claws raking across Zhao's chest. Push through, Zhao ordered, his wound already knitting closed. We have to reach those dreadnoughts. The Bloodhawks fought their way forward, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. They finally breached the construction bay, gasping at the sight of massive warships under assembly. As the last virus was uploaded, a new threat emerged. A Benzite fleet materialized from slipstream, surrounding the base and opening fire. The entire structure shuddered under the barrage. Zhao's comm crackled to life. Bloodhawks, this is Santos. Evrak has launched a surprise attack. We're moving to extract you now. Get to the surface. The team fought their way to a hangar, commandeering a Kraxan transport. Zhao piloted the ship through a storm of weapons fire, dodging Benzite cruisers as Santos's stealth dreadnoughts emerged from slipstream to provide cover. Evrak's face appeared on the comm, sneering. Surrender now, humans, or watch your prized metamorph burn. Zhao's form rippled, unable to settle. The real question, Admiral, is what it will cost us next time. Another Benzite cruiser squadron has broken off diplomatic contact, her aide reported. That's the third one this week. Santos rubbed her temples, fatigue etching lines across her face. And Valara? Still in power, but her grip is slipping. The hardliners are gaining traction. A priority alert flashed, and President Montero's hologram materialized. Admiral, we're changing course. I've authorized Zhao's offensive against the remaining Kraxan forces. Santos's eyes widened. Mr. President, with respect, that's a dangerous escalation. We should be focusing on... The decision is made, Montero cut her off. Zhao's Bloodhawks will spearhead the assault. We end this now before Kargan can regroup. As the transmission ended, Santos slammed her fist on the console. She knew arguing was futile, but the pit in her stomach grew. Zhao approached, his eyes gleaming with an alien light. We're ready, Admiral. Kargan's remnants won't know what hit them. A predatory smile played across Zhao's features. Then we reshape the galaxy. On Keldara, the final stronghold, Santos coordinated orbital support as Zhao led the ground assault. The planet's surface disappeared beneath roiling clouds of mutagenic agents and weapons fire. We've breached the command citadel, Zhao's voice crackled over the comm. Zarkov is cornered. Your abominations can't save you, Zarkov snarled, lashing out with mutated limbs. Zhao's form blurred, tendrils erupting from his body to ensnare the Kraxan commander. We are the future, Zhao hissed, his voice inhuman. Zarkov's body convulsed, rejecting the invasive genetic assault. With a final, rattling breath, he collapsed. As the dust settled on Keldara, Santos's sensors lit up with new contacts. Multiple Benzite signatures detected, her tactical officer reported. It's Battle Master Zarath's fleet. Zarath's guttural voice filled the bridge. Neutralized, you've unleashed an atrocity. Zhao, she barked into the comm. What have you done? Zhao's voice cut through the chaos. Zarath, why destroy us when you can join us? Together, we can reshape everything, starting with Earth. Santos's blood ran cold as she realized the true scope of the threat they had created. The galaxy teetered on the edge of a new, terrifying era, with humanity caught in the crossfire. Get me a visual on Zhao, Santos ordered, her voice tight. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing Zhao standing amid the writhing biomass that had consumed Keldara. His form rippled and shifted, barely recognizable as human. Perhaps you need motivation, Zhao hissed. I control your purgers now. Join us or watch them die, and your entire race become our slaves. Zarath's face contorted with rage and despair. You leave me no choice, he growled. I submit. Santos slammed her fist on the console. No! Admiral, her communications officer interrupted. Priority transmission from Earth. President Montero's haggard face appeared on screen. Santos, it's bedlam down here. Riots in the streets, purists rallying behind Zhao. I've had to declare martial law. A new alert cut her off. Multiple slipstream signatures detected, her tactical officer reported. It's Valara's fleet, and they're not alone. The view screen shifted, revealing a massive armada dropping out of slipstream. At its center loomed a vessel unlike anything Santos had ever seen. Sleek, almost organic in its design, radiating power beyond human comprehension. Admiral Santos, a new voice echoed through the bridge, deep and resonant. I am High Arbiter Zixlax of the Thovian Primacy. By request of your President Montero, we have come to restore order to this sector. Montero's hologram flickered to life, his eyes wild with desperation. Santos, I've made a deal. The Thovians will intervene, but we must cede temporary control of our military assets. It's our only chance to stop Zhao and Zarath. Mr. President, with all due respect. That's an order, Admiral, Montero snapped. Comply with the Thovians, now! As the words left her mouth, space erupted into chaos. Zhao's Neo-Imperium ships and Zarath's renegade Benzite faction opened fire on the Thovian fleet, their weapons flaring against impossibly strong shields. The view screen filled with a dizzying array of Thovian bioconstructs, living starships that twisted and morphed, evading enemy fire with unnatural grace. Swarms of drones, each no larger than a fighter, coalesced into intricate formations that systematically dismantled the opposing forces. Santos watched the battle unfold, her tactical mind recognizing the futility of resisting such overwhelming force. A priority alert flashed on her console, a coded message from Earth Command. Her eyes widened as she decrypted the contents. Prep a shuttle, she ordered. We're making for the Mjolnir. Mjolnir's engines roared, tearing a hole in real space as it emerged between the warring armadas. Its annihilator beam lanced out, a searing line of destruction that carved through Zarath's defenses and crippled his ship. Santos watched as Thovian bioconstructs swarmed the disabled vessel, efficiently extracting the Benzite commander. On another screen, she saw Zhao's flagship, Apocrypha, swarmed by strange, morphing hunter-killer organisms that countered the Bloodhawk's genetic adaptations. "Admiral," her comms officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Thovian command ship." Before Santos could argue, alarms blared across Mjolnir's bridge. "Multiple quantum phase signatures detected," her science officer reported. They're locking onto Earth." "What have you done?" Santos demanded, her voice hoarse. Santos slumped in her command chair, the weight of their failure crushing down upon her. Outside Mjolnir's viewports, the Thovian armada began to encircle them, their intentions clear. In the silence of the bridge, Santos's mind raced, searching for a way out of humanity's gilded cage. "Admiral," her tactical officer's voice cut through the silence, "we're detecting unusual EM activity on Mars." Before Santos could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. The main view screen flickered, showing a series of nuclear detonations rippling across the Martian surface. Thovian interdictor beacons winked out one by one, their signals overwhelmed by the electromagnetic pulses. "It's Colonel Defoe," Santos breathed, recognizing the tactical signature. "She's making her move." "Track those vessels," Santos ordered. "We need to know where they're going." Days turned to weeks as Santos and her crew fought a desperate holding action against the Thovian forces. They used Mjolnir's superior firepower to keep the aliens at bay, but it was a losing battle. "Admiral," her comms officer called out, "we're receiving a coded transmission from Saturn's Moonria." "Set course for the Oort cloud," Santos commanded. "We're joining the resistance." Mjolnir arrived just in time to witness Defoe's forces capturing the abandoned Thovian interdictor platform. Santos watched in awe as Ramirez's engineers cracked its systems, unlocking the key to breaching the Primacy's quarantine. "We may not like each other, Admiral," Eris growled, his voice inhuman, "but we both want the Thovians gone." Santos nodded grimly. "Then let's take back our home." "All hands, battle stations," Santos ordered, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. "We end this here, or we don't end it at all." Mjolnir's engines roared to life, propelling the Dreadnought towards the oncoming Thovian armada. Behind her, Defoe's liberated Earth forces rallied, preparing for humanity's final stand against their would-be conquerors. Santos gripped the arms of her command chair as Mjolnir shuddered under the onslaught of Thovian weapons fire. The bridge erupted in a cacophony of alarms and shouted status reports. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a dizzying array of battle footage from across Earth and its colonies. In New York, Shanghai, and Novaya Zemlya, Eris's metamorphic troops tore through Thovian defenses like a viral infection, their bodies shifting and adapting to overcome each new obstacle. Ramirez's face appeared on screen, his eyes blazing with purpose. "Santos, we're punching through. Lex Talionis has breached their interdiction grid. We need Mjolnir's firepower to keep those cedar ships off our backs." "Understood, General," Santos nodded. "All batteries, target those incoming xenoformers. Don't let a single one reach the surface." Mjolnir's massive guns roared to life, filling space with lances of destructive energy. The Thovian swarms scattered, their biological hulls rupturing under the assault. A new alert blared across the bridge. "Admiral," her science officer called out, voice tight with fear, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the Thovian flagship. It's... oh God." The view screen shifted, showing Skenner's massive vessel disgorging what looked like glowing meteorites. As they streaked towards Earth's atmosphere, Santos realized with horror what they were. "Cedar bombs," she whispered. "They're going to xenoform the entire planet." "Incoming transmission from Colonel Defoe," the comms officer interrupted. Defoe's face appeared streaked with blood and grime. "Santos, we've extracted President Vashti. He's about to make a system-wide broadcast. We need you to amplify the signal. As Vashti's words galvanized the resistance, Santos saw the tide of battle shift. Human forces across the system redoubled their efforts, pushing back against the Thovian onslaught. "Admiral," her sensor officer called out, voice filled with awe, "you need to see this." The view screen shifted once more, showing a tear in space-time itself. Through the rift poured ship after massive ship, the Night Ark fleet, humanity's last desperate hope. "All hands," she commanded, her voice steady and resolute. "Prepare for close-quarters engagement. We're joining the Night Ark in their assault on Skenner's flagship." As Mjolnir surged forward to join the fray, Santos knew the true test of humanity's purpose was only just beginning. Santos gripped her command chair as Mjolnir shuddered under the onslaught of Thovian weapons fire. Through the chaos of battle, a new alert blared across the bridge. The view screen shifted, revealing a tear in space-time itself. Through the rift poured ship after massive ship, humanity's last, desperate hope made manifest. Santos watched as the newly arrived Dreadnoughts engaged Skenner's forces, their weapons blazing with antimatter fury. The colossal vessels unleashed a blistering barrage against the xenoforming God-Kraken cedar ships, tearing through their biological hulls with brutal efficiency. "Incoming transmission from Commander Defoe," her comms officer reported. Defoe's face appeared on screen, streaked with sweat and persistence. "Santos, we're deploying supremacy-coded interdictor transponders. Vice Admiral Harkness's reserve fleet is solidifying positions around the colonies. We need Mjolnir to provide covering fire." As Mjolnir's guns roared to life once more, Santos saw the tide of battle shift. Human forces across the system pushed back against the Thovian onslaught with renewed vigor. Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. "Admiral," her tactical officer shouted, "we're detecting massive energy fluctuations from Skenner's flagship." Santos watched in horror as a pulse of sickly green energy radiated outward from the Archon's vessel. On auxiliary screens, she saw Defoe's metamorphic vanguard troops begin to convulse and mutate uncontrollably. "It's some kind of kill switch," her science officer reported, frantically analyzing the data. "It's affecting all primacy-derived species." Before Santos could respond, another transmission cut through the chaos. General Ramirez's face appeared, his expression grim but determined. "Santos, we're pooling our scientific teams to analyze this pathogen. We've recruited Ian Zhao to assist." Santos' eyes widened at the mention of the incarcerated xenocytist. "Ramirez, are you sure about this?" "Admiral," her sensor officer cried out, "massive gravitational distortions detected. Earth's time stream is destabilizing." Santos watched in horror as reality itself began to warp and twist around them. Just when all seemed lost, Defoe's voice cut through the chaos once more. "In Heimdall," he announced. "Deploying gravity lenses now." In that pivotal moment, Ramirez's face appeared on screen once more. "Transmitting regenerative payload now," he reported. "Let's hope this works." A pulse of data surged outward, inoculating the Night Ark's mutated armsmen against Skenner's bioweapon. Santos watched in amazement as Defoe's vanguard troops began to stabilize, their forms solidifying into new hybrid configurations. As space-time settled, both fleets found themselves locked in a multiversal stasis amid shattered interspatial domains. Santos gripped her command chair, her eyes fixed on the screen as human dreadnoughts erupted from temporally calcified nodes, their hulls now augmented into biomechanical hyperorganisms. The churning melee escalated to an apex singularity event, a cosmic maelstrom from which neither side could disengage. Santos knew that the fate of humanity would be decided here, in this impossible battlefield beyond the limits of conventional reality. "All hands," she commanded, her voice steady despite the surreal chaos surrounding them. "Prepare for trans-dimensional engagement. We end this now." Mjolnir's engines roared to life, propelling the dreadnought towards the heart of the cosmic storm. As they plunged into the swirling vortex of fractured space-time, Santos steeled herself for the battle that would determine the future of her species. As Mjolnir plunged into the cosmic vortex, reality itself seemed to fracture. Santos gripped her command chair, her fingers tightening as the Dreadnought shuddered and groaned under forces beyond comprehension. "Status report," she barked, her eyes scanning the chaotic readings flooding every screen. "Admiral, we're everywhere and nowhere," her science officer stammered, frantically trying to make sense of the data. "We've entered a state of multiversal stasis. Conventional physics no longer apply." "Incoming transmission from Admiral Harkness," the COEMS officer announced. Harkness's face appeared on screen, his features distorted by temporal fluctuations. "Santos, we're initiating consolidation protocols. Zhao's working on anti-entropy munitions. We need you to coordinate with Defoe's resistance to keep those interdiction fields destabilized." Before Santos could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. "Multiple temporal incursions detected," her sensor officer shouted. "The Thovians are activating something called the Yggdrasil contingencies." The universe seemed to splinter around them. Santos watched in horror as pockets of human space began to loop and branch, each iteration more chaotic than the last. Through fragmented comm channels, she heard desperate reports from Defoe's Neo-Human Liberation Front as they struggled to maintain cohesion across shattering timelines. On the main view screen, Santos saw Captain Kez's specialized void ships emerge from hyperspace rifts, their hulls gleaming with otherworldly energy. The Azathoth Dreadnoughts fired beams of pure causality, temporarily freezing the cascading temporal chaos into manageable nodes. Santos nodded grimly. "All batteries, target those frozen time pockets. Clear a path for our breachers." Mjolnir's guns roared to life once more, but instead of energy beams, they fired streams of quantum probability. The weapons tore holes in the fabric of space-time itself, allowing Ramirez's metamorphic troops to slip through. Her science officer's face went pale. "It's the Thovians. They've initiated something called Project Götterdämmerung. The entire Sol system is starting to unravel." "Unknown vessel detected," her sensor officer called out. It's operating outside of known spatial dimensions." The view screen shifted to show an impossible construct, a dreadnought that seemed to exist in multiple realities simultaneously. Its hull was a fractal pattern that hurt the eyes to look at directly. "It's Eternum," Harkness's voice crackled over the comms. "Our final ace in the hole." As reality stabilized around them, Santos saw Harkness's reinforced Ypsilantic spearhead pour through the gaps torn by Eternum. The Night Ark's full might was brought to bear against Skenner's forces. "Admiral," her tactical officer called out, "we're receiving new coordinates from Harkness. We're to join the spearhead's push." Santos took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "Helm, set course for those coordinates. All hands, prepare for transdimensional combat. This is where we make our stand." Mjolnir's engines hummed with newfound power as the dreadnought aligned itself with Harkness's formation. As they plunged once more into the reality-warping fray, Santos knew that the true battle for humanity's future was only just beginning. As Mjolnir aligned with Harkness's formation, reality fractured around them. Santos gripped her command chair, her squeezing hard as the dreadnought plunged into the chaotic fray. "Multiple breaches detected," her tactical officer shouted. "Night Ark shock legions deploying across paradox nodes." Through the view screen, Santos watched as Harkness's metamorphic troops poured into the shattered domains of Skenner's stronghold. Bloodhawks, their bodies shimmering with regenerative archaisms, led the charge. Kez's face appeared on screen, distorted by reality fluctuations. "Santos, we're initiating Abyssal Forge protocols. Prepare for ontoversal cascade." Before Santos could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. "Ma'am," her science officer reported, panic in his voice. "Detecting self-replicating chronolytic viruses. They're targeting Eternum's subdimensional tethers." Santos watched in horror as the impossible dreadnought's fractal hull began to waver and distort. "Harkness," she barked into the comms. "Eternum's compromised. We need—" Her words were cut short as a blinding flash engulfed the view screen. When it cleared, Santos saw a shimmering sphere of energy surrounding Earth. "It's Ramirez," her sensor officer explained. "He's enacted the Tartarus contingency, Earth's essence. It's been uploaded into Eternum's subcore." As the remnants of Sol began to crumble around them, Santos received a priority transmission from General Ramirez himself. "Santos," Ramirez's voice crackled through the static. "We're initiating full evacuation. Defoe's coordinating Omega dropships for remaining terrestrial enclaves. But we're running out of time." "It's happening," Kez's voice cut through the chaos. "Ontiversal cascade initiated. We're transitioning into new universes." Santos felt a sickening lurch as Mjolnir was caught in the dimensional flood. Through fragmented sensor readings, she witnessed the impossible. Entire fleets funneling through recursive brains, reality itself rewriting around them. "All hands," she commanded, her voice steady despite the cosmic upheaval. "Brace for transition. We're about to redefine the very laws of physics." As Mjolnir plunged into the nascent cosmos, Santos saw Eternum unleash its final payload. Transontological energy erupted from the fractal dreadnought, infusing the birthing singularity with humanity's essence. The view screen flared white, and Santos felt herself stretched across dimensions. As Mjolnir hurtled towards an unknown future, she closed her eyes and embraced the cosmic rebirth. Santos blinked, her senses reeling as Mjolnir's hull vibrated with multidimensional energy. The view screen flickered, resolving into a kaleidoscope of newborn realities. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the cosmic upheaval. Santos nodded, relief washing over her. But the moment was short-lived as alarms blared across the bridge. "Ma'am, we're detecting widespread corruption in the cosmic potentiality," her tactical officer reported. "Skenner's xenoforming matrices have overwritten vast swathes of neo-realities with alien biospheres." The view screen shifted, displaying a fractal map of the nascent multiverse. Santos watched as human instances multiplied exponentially, branching into divergent chronologies. The screen split, revealing two faces Santos didn't recognize. On one side, a stern-faced man with augmented eyes glared at her. The other face belonged to a woman with an air of calm authority. "President Vashti of the Unificationists," she introduced herself. "We seek symbiotic coexistence with carefully terraformed xenospheres." "It's Zephos," her tactical officer reported. "His forces are launching xenocost crusades against Vashti's domains." Kez's face appeared on screen, his features set in dogged tenacity. "Already on it, Admiral. We're mobilizing to counter Zephos's pogroms." "Admiral, we're detecting anomalous bioweaponry signatures. It's Ian Zhao. He's manifesting across Vashti's domains, spawning some kind of cryptic xenomorphic posthumanism." "Ma'am," her helmsman called out, "we're receiving new coordinates from Admiral Harkness. He's activating Eternum's primal forges to counter entropic decay." Santos took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. "Set course for those coordinates. All hands, prepare for multiversal engagement. We need to stabilize this new cosmos before it tears itself apart." The eternal arms race between mankind and its synthetic offspring, reshaping the fabric of reality, was abruptly interrupted by a transmission from President Vashti. Her face materialized on Mjolnir's view screen, her eyes burning with dedication. "Admiral Santos, we're initiating Operation Concordance. I need you to rendezvous with Eris immediately." Santos nodded, her fingers flying over the command console. "Understood, Madam President. Setting course, now." Eris's vessel emerged from a nearby brain, its hull shimmering with metamorphic energy. The Bloodhawk's face appeared on the comm screen, her features constantly shifting between human and something other. "Admiral," Eris said, her voice a multi-tonal chorus, "we're en route to parley with Zephos. Your presence will lend weight to our proposal." "It's necessary," Eris replied. "We must reunite humanity before it's too late." As they approached Zephos's domain, Santos saw the stark difference between realities. Where Vashti's territories teemed with diverse life forms, the resplendent worlds were sterile monuments to human genetic purity. Zephos's face appeared on the screen, his augmented eyes glowing with barely held back disgust. "State your purpose, abominations!" Eris stepped forward, her form rippling. "We come with an offer of alliance, Archon Zephos. President Vashti proposes joint guardianship of newly formed realms, human primacy without xenocide." The negotiation devolved quickly, ending with Xiphos cutting the transmission. As they retreated from resplendent space, Santos received an urgent communique from General Ramirez. Before Santos could respond, alarms blared across Mjolnir's bridge. "Multiple incursions detected," her tactical officer shouted. "Resplendent forces are launching attacks across unificationist space." Santos watched in horror as Xiphos fleets tore through reality, leaving devastation in their wake. On a nearby view screen, she saw President Vashti narrowly escape assassination, saved only by the superhuman reflexes of Captain Void's Hyper Knights. "Santos, we're detecting massive cosmic disturbances. Eternum's birth throes have destabilized the entire multiverse. I'm initiating Omega Protocol." As Harkness's Omega squadrons unleashed devastating transontological purges, Santos watched entire branches of human existence implode. Vashti's unificationist domains shattered into disconnected causal strands, while Xiphos's resplendent territories splintered across diverging quantum tangents. With each erasure, a new singularity formed, drawing all surrounding realities toward it like a cosmic whirlpool. Santos gripped her command chair as Mjolnir was buffeted by waves of unreality. "Ma'am," her science officer called out, his voice strained, "the multiverse is collapsing in on itself. We're being drawn into something." As the view screen filled with the blinding light of a newborn cosmos, Santos realized that humanity's rebirth had become a crucible of its own making. The struggle to define mankind's future now threatened to erase that future entirely. Mjolnir plunged toward the heart of the conflagration, and Santos steeled herself for whatever came next. The battle for humanity's soul raged on, with the very fabric of existence hanging in the balance. The blinding light engulfed Mjolnir as Santos gripped her command chair. Reality itself seemed to tear apart, reformed, and shattered again in rapid succession. "Structural integrity failing?" her engineering officer shouted over the cacophony of alarms. "We're being pulled apart at the quantum level." Santos watched in horror as entire sections of her ship phased in and out of existence. Through the flickering view screen, she witnessed the apocalyptic aftermath of Harkness's Omega Protocol. Vashti's once thriving symbiotic worlds fractured into discordant strands. Some merged with writhing masses of Zhao's mutating xenocults, while others desperately clung to dwindling pockets of stable spacetime. "Admiral," her science officer called out, his voice strained, "Xiphos's resplendent territories are undergoing massive genomic destabilization. They're unraveling." "Incoming transmission from General Ramirez," her comms officer reported. Ramirez's face appeared distorted by interference. "Santos, we're initiating emergency evacuations across all remaining domains. Harkness is preparing to commit Eternum's full substrate. We need to—" His image cut out abruptly as a massive energy surge rocked Mjolnir. Santos felt a moment of vertigo as her entire being seemed to compress into a single point, then explode outward into infinite awareness. The Arc Nova radiance washed over her, downloaded her consciousness into raw data. For an instant, she was one with every human mind across the multiverse. Xiphos's fanatics, Vashti's idealists, even Zhao's mutated hordes. "Status report," she managed, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. Her tactical officer, now a shimmering hologram of pure information, responded. "Admiral, we've been shunted into a non-corporeal infoscape. Multiple factions are converging on Eternum's resoprojector. They're fighting to control the narrative of reality's rebirth." A violent shudder interrupted her. Through the view screen, now a window into pure data, she saw vast armies of information colliding. Xiphos's crusaders, rendered as rigid geometric forms, clashed with the fluid, ever-changing constructs of Vashti's forces. Amidst the chaos, Zhao's xenocults spread like viral infections, corrupting and assimilating everything they touched. "Ma'am," her helmsman called out, his voice echoing across multiple dimensions. "We're detecting a massive gravitational anomaly. The negating fronts are compounding." Santos watched as the fabric of their new reality began to warp and twist. The battlefield around Eternum's resoprojector fractured into countless subjective realities, each vying for dominance. Mjolnir surged forward, its hull morphing to navigate the shifting landscape of pure information. As they approached the heart of the conflict, Santos steeled herself for the battle that would determine the very nature of existence itself. Mjolnir shuddered as it pierced the boundary of the Risa projector's influence. Santos gripped her command chair, her augmented senses overwhelmed by the cacophony of competing realities. "Multiple incursions detected," her tactical officer shouted, his holographic form flickering. "Vashti's unificationists are launching ontological strikes against the projector's core." "Evasive maneuvers," Santos ordered. "Get us closer to that projector." As Mjolnir weaved through the battlefield, Santos saw entire sections of the multiverse collapse in on themselves. The resulting singularity pulsed with unimaginable power, drawing everything towards its hyperdense core. A priority transmission cut through the noise. "Admiral Santos," Eris's multitonal voice rang out, "we've made a breakthrough. Ramirez and I have reverse-engineered Eternum's transfiguration algorithms." Santos's eyes widened. "Can you stabilize this mess?" "We're seeding the singularity now," Eris replied. "But we need cover." "Understood." Santos nodded to her weapons officer. "All batteries, provide suppressing fire. Give them the window they need." Mjolnir's weapons blazed to life, lancing out across dimensional boundaries to strike at opposing forces. For a moment it seemed to work. A new megarealm began to form, its boundaries shimmering with potential. But the reprieve was short-lived. Alarms blared as Xiphos's resplendent armada tore through the megarealm's outer shell. "They're forcing an archoviral inload," the science officer reported, his voice strained. "Xiphos is overriding indigenous lifeforms with his own templates." Santos watched in horror as entire planets transformed into vast bioforges, crackling with mutational energies. Xiphos' voice boomed across all channels. "Witness the ascension of true humanity. We shall remake this universe in our perfected image." But even as Vashti and Kez stemmed the tide of Xiphos' advance, a new threat emerged. Writhing tendrils of corrupted data slithered through the gaps in reality's fabric. Within moments, the newborn universe began to segregate. Vast swaths of space coalesced into distinct domains, each populated by divergent human offshoots. Santos watched as Xiphos's augmented primacists, Vashti's symbiotic collectives, and Zhao's metamorphic mutants vied for dominance. "Admiral," her helmsman called out, "we're detecting massive gravitational distortions beyond the inflating horizon. The negation crisis? It's not over." Santos gripped her command chair as Mjolnir shuddered, buffeted by the gravitational distortions beyond the inflating horizon. The newborn megarealm, once a beacon of hope, now fractured before her eyes into three distinct domains. "Status report," she barked, her eyes fixed on the kaleidoscopic chaos unfolding on the display. Her tactical officer's holographic form flickered. "Admiral, we're detecting massive power signatures. Vashti's unificationists, Xiphos's primacists, and Zhao's mutavores are solidifying their territories." Before Santos could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. The science officer's voice cut through the din. "Negation crisis intensifying. Hyper-distortive recursion, singularities forming." Santos watched in horror as shards of negated space-time coalesced into roiling vortices, their gravitic forces threatening to tear apart the very fabric of the newborn universe. The view screen shifted, showing massive energy constructs obliterating the approaching singularities. Entire rogue Cosmonex enclaves vanished, shunted into snarl spaces by Kez's subduction fields. But it wasn't enough. With each threat neutralized, two more materialized to take its place. Santos knew they needed a new strategy, and fast. As if in answer to her unspoken thought, Eris's face appeared on a secondary display. "Admiral, we have a potential solution. We can catalyze a higher dimensional horizon event, imbuing the megarealm with meta-laws resistant to negational incursions." For a moment it seemed to work. The onslaught of singularities slowed, the megarealm's new physics repelling the negational incursions. "Xiphos is making his move," the tactical officer reported. "He's implanting aggressor meme codices across unstable continua." Entire galaxies transformed before Santos's eyes, purged of all alien influence and remade in Xiphos's image of human perfection. But the Primus's victory was short-lived. "Zhao is countering," the science officer called out. "Xenometaphoric inloads detected." Before Santos could object, she saw the effects ripple across the view screen. The warring realities began to splinter and separate, shunted into isolated subspatial domains. Human and alien archetypes alike were scattered across these new pocket universes, cut off from one another. "Ma'am," her helmsman called out, "we're detecting multiple battleframe insertions. Captain Kez and Void are deploying strike teams to neutralize Nexus singularities." Santos nodded, her mind racing. "Set course for the nearest singularity. We need to support those strike teams." As Mjolnir surged forward, Santos saw the true scope of the conflict unfolding around them. Every victory seemed Pyrrhic, each shattered multi-shard spawning new fractal branchings into unstable neocosmoses. She realized with grim clarity that this was no longer just a battle for humanity's future. It was a war for the very nature of reality itself. And at the heart of it all lay Eternum's cradle code, the key to imprinting one's vision as reality's solitary archetype. Santos watched as Mjolnir pierced the event horizon of the Nexus singularity. Reality twisted, folded, and reassembled itself around them. When the disorientation subsided, she found herself staring at a radically altered cosmos. "Status report," she demanded, her eyes scanning the transformed view screen. Her tactical officer, now a shimmering quantum projection, responded. "Admiral, we've emerged into a probability field. Multiple realities are coexisting simultaneously." "Santos, Project Schrödinger is active," he said, his voice echoing across dimensional boundaries. "We've generated quantum superpositions across all cosmological conduits. Every inhabited realm now exists in a state of existential uncertainty." The view screen shifted, revealing vast swaths of space shimmering with overlapping potentialities. Santos watched as entire civilizations phased in and out of existence, their fates hanging in a delicate balance. "Heiress to Mjolnir," a new voice cut in. "We've successfully integrated Eternum's remnants into the omniplexer array. Human and xenogen syncretic codices are now part of the quantum substrate." "Correct," Harkness confirmed. "It's our last chance to prevent total negational collapse." The ship shuddered as it navigated through the probability field. Santos watched rival post-human civilizations clash in quantum combat, their very existence hanging on the outcome of each engagement. "Multiple decoherence events detected," her science officer called out. "Realities are collapsing into stable states." Santos gripped her command chair as the cosmos around them flickered and warped. Through the chaos, she glimpsed two distinct archetypes emerging. In one, she saw gleaming cityscapes where humans and alien life forms coexisted in harmony, their combined knowledge pushing the boundaries of science and philosophy. In the other, she witnessed vast armadas of augmented post-humans, their forms perfected beyond recognition, asserting dominance over a cosmos purged of all alien influence. "The twin archetypes are stabilizing," Harkness reported. "All other possibilities are collapsing." "Ma'am," her tactical officer interrupted, "we're detecting anomalous energy signatures. Zhao's xenovirus strains, they've survived as decoherence ghosts." Santos watched as writhing tendrils of corrupted data slithered through the outskirts of both megarealms, a persistent threat to the newfound stability. As Mjolnir surged forward, its hull reconfiguring to navigate the new cosmic architecture, Santos knew that the battle for reality's future had entered a new phase. The uneasy equilibrium between the two megarealms would not last forever, and Zhao's mutating threat lurked in the shadows. She set her jaw, eyes fixed on the shimmering barrier between realities. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Santos and her crew would face them head-on, guardians of a fragile cosmic balance in a universe reborn. Santos watched as the twin megarealms stabilized, their vastness beyond comprehension. On one side, a kaleidoscope of human and alien forms intermingled, their combined knowledge pushing the boundaries of possibility. On the other, augmented post-humans in gleaming battle frames, asserted their dominance over a purified cosmos. The ship shuddered as reality itself seemed to twist and compress around them. Santos gripped her command chair, watching in awe as the divergent space-time continua began to funnel into a single point. Ontogenetic recombination successful, Ramirez reported, his voice strained. Metaphysical singularity forming. Now! Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. "Ma'am," her science officer called out, "we're detecting a massive psionic surge." Santos watched in horror as writhing tendrils of corrupted data erupted from the newly formed nexus. Zhao's ghost strains, evolved into self-replicating cybergraphs, tore through the fabric of reality. The unified consciousness that had begun to form across both megaverses fractured, shattered into countless shards of deconstructed emanations. Santos felt her own mind blown, bombarded by fragments of alien thoughts and impossible geometries. "Eris!" she shouted over the cacophony of alarms and psychic feedback. "Abort the project!" "It's drawing everything in," her helmsman reported, panic evident in his voice. "Dimensional collapse accelerating." Santos watched, helpless, as the eldritch omnicatalysis began to devour reality itself. Entire galaxies winked out of existence, drawn into the insatiable maw of oblivion. So, this is how the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whim. The words hung in the air for a heartbeat, and then the view screen went dark. The ship's systems fell silent. And in that eternal frozen moment, Santos knew that humanity's grand journey had reached its end, not in triumph or defeat, but in the utter annihilation of reality itself. As the laws of existence crumbled around her, Santos closed her eyes, allowing herself to be drawn into the all-consuming singularity. The last thought that flickered through her fading mind was a question. What, if anything, could possibly come after this absolute end?
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.